Okay, and a very good evening to everybody, and welcome back. Welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 75, and we are still in the Dell under Weathertop, having enjoyed several weeks worth of poetry and discussion, which has been fantastic. And we are now getting ready to actually return to the action here tonight and get into the attack by the Ringwraiths on Frodo and the company under Weathertop. This is a really important scene for a lot of reasons, and I think well, okay, I'm going to say boldly, I think a lot of people misunderstand this passage, and I say that with some confidence because I know I'm one of them who has often, for much of my life, misunderstood this passage, and I've been reconsidering this passage sort of again and again. So I think we learn a lot in this passage, so let's see what we learn together as we are studying this passage here tonight. But first, before we begin, I do have some announcements because we are coming up on a very exciting time because it is September. It is almost Bilbo's birthday, and that means it's almost time for the fall fundraising campaign for Signum University. It is time to keep Signum running for another year. We've had such an exciting year this year as we're working through our credentialing process, achieving program approval in the state of New Hampshire, which was super exciting, and we're now enthusiastically on to the next step. So lots of stuff going on and looking forward to doing some special stuff with you guys. So let me just draw your attention to a couple things quick. First, there's so there are three major kind of framing events of the fundraising campaign. We're going to do a bunch of things during class as well. Those of you who were around last year may remember this, where we did special like giveaways and stuff and everything during during Exploring the Lord of the Rings. During the fundraising campaign, we'll do some special fundraising stuff, and I'll talk about that next week. But for this week, I just want to draw your attention to the three major events, as I said, kind of the structuring events of the fundraising campaign. First, to open the campaign, we are going to have and this is new, we didn't do this before, we're going to do a Hobbit Day reading event, which is going to be fun. I'm going to read several passages of Tolkien. I'm just going to read a few long passages, and then going to talk about them. And I'm going to talk about them with some friends. Going to have some colleagues, a bunch of different kinds of people who are going to be coming in to join me. Just not having the goal isn't really a sort of a high-level scholarly discussion, more of a fan discussion with other scholars and other students of Tolkien as we talk about some of these passages, what we like about them, what they've meant to us, and all that kind of thing. I'm definitely going to read, for instance, one of the passages I'm going to read is from The Fall of Gondolin to celebrate the publication of The Fall of Gondolin recently. Anyway, so we're gonna read some Tolkien passages, talk about some Tolkien passages, but then also we're gonna do a couple other things too. We're gonna read a passage from Harry Potter, talk about that and so the whole Harry Potter phenomenon as well, and then we're gonna also do a passage from Ursula Le Guin in honor of Ursula Le Guin's passing earlier this year. So we're gonna be talking about that too. So we're gonna have a varied program, reading a bunch of different passages of different kinds, and talking with a bunch of people about what, sort of the impact that these things have had on our lives over the last, many years. So this is going to be on this coming Saturday. So this coming Saturday, September 22nd, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern time. So this is at a Europe-friendly time. So for those poor Europeans who are all tucked up in their beds now, it will be at a reasonable time for them to watch. So I hope everybody will be able to join us for that. And then secondly, the week after that, so this coming Saturday, is our kickoff reading event. The next Saturday, the 29th, is going to be my annual and now traditional Lord of the Rings Online marathon. So I've been doing a marathon playing session of the Lord of the Rings Online for several years. Was was my mad dash through Moria the first time I did that. I can't remember if that was first or only the most memorable. But anyway, I'm going to take Wigand, my primary character, my original character, who is level 92. Now he's like level 92 and 99 100ths. It was funny. Wigand showed up at Ales and Tales last night, hosted by the Lonely Mountain Band on Landreval, as I was giving a talk to them and hanging out with them for a while. And so I showed up as Wigand here in the lore hall, and everyone was really bothered by the fact that he was missing like 20,000 XP for level 93. I mean, his XP bar was almost to the very edge, and they were like, I can't even look at that. Like it was really troubling to a lot of people, which I didn't fully anticipate. Anyhow, poor Wigand needs a boost. So what we're going to do, so next Saturday on the 29th, poor Wigand is still where I left him last year, essentially. I have not had time, again, lots of stuff going on at Signum this year. I haven't had much time to play. So Wigand is still at the door of the Paths of the Dead, dragging his feet like Gimli, except Gimli only dragged his feet for a few seconds. Wigand has been dragging his feet for an entire year. So he's going to cross the threshold finally, and he's going to enter the Paths of the Dead, and I'm going to take him as far through Gondor as I possibly can. I'm going to focus on the epic quest line, and I'm going to run it. I'm going to go through, and I'm going to see as much of Gondor as I can, sort of see the shape of the quest lines the story that they build through Gondor, and try to get as close as I can get to Minas Tirith. I'm really keen to get to the Battle of Pelennor Field, and of course, eventually, maybe, who knows, catch up with the rest of the game, though goodness knows the developers have been putting out material faster than I can play it because of the amount of time I have. But anyway, it's going to be fun. Yeah, Holograw, I am going to do some XP boosting. He'll be good. We'll see what we can do. We'll see what we can do. But I'm confident in Wigand Holograw. This is my guardian, remember, right? So like, under level is the way he rolls. It's all good. Anyhow, so what we're gonna do is, again, I'm just gonna go as far as I can do that night. So I'm gonna do, I don't know what, like 12 hours of Wigand Marathon on the 29th. So hope you'll be able to join me for that. And then our final event of the campaign. So we have the Tolkien, the Hobbit Day reading event on the 22nd, this Saturday at 3 o'clock. And then we have the Wigand Marathon starting at noon Eastern time on the 29th. And then on the 13th, October 13th, Saturday, October 13th, is going to be the traditional end of campaign webathon. So we're going to be again, broadcasting that whole day, special sessions and talks and guests and readings and Lotro playing and special classes and all kinds of things. So it's going to be as always, the webathon is great fun. So anyway, those are some of the things that are coming up next week. As I said, I'll talk to you guys a little bit more about the fundraising stuff and some of the rewards and gifts and things that we have for you guys, to thank you guys as always for your very generous support, upon which we rely very heavily at Signum University. So thank you so much for supporting us for another year, and we look forward to another awesome campaign this year. But okay, so let's see. Okay, I see. Lincoln is wondering how come the two classes we spent discussing the Baron and Luthien story, we covered the most material in class that we have in months. You mean most number of slides? Yeah. Well, yeah, we did. Well, of course, Lincoln, part of that is that although was poetry, it was also fewer words per slide than many of our other slides, so that helps a little bit. But yeah, it also helps. I mean, even though of course we go through the poem stanza by stanza, nevertheless it's still one unit, right? So even though I have 5 slides, I had divided the poem onto 5 different slides. It's not like 5 slides in a normal class, right? It was really one unit. And of course, Lincoln, I also cheated, right, by going like 3 hours for that first class. But anyhow, all right. So we're going to be fine. Oh yeah, see, Sharon, you don't have to worry in my Lotro marathon this year. You don't have to worry about Mumakil jumping out of the bushes, because I mean they do that. I mean they lurk. We've seen it, right? I mean they like hide in the bushes and then they spring out and trample you. But I'm going to be on my Guardian, and so he's like practically indestructible. So it's all good, right? Hologrone, nothing to worry about, right? Nothing to worry about. No, I see your vote of confidence, and I appreciate that. So that's good. Yeah, Mad Violinists, they are related to Jaguars. Yeah, you gotta be careful with those. Exactly. Yeah, they're more. Yeah, they're sort of they're more like heffalumps than woozles, Brandon. Exactly. Okay. So let's get back to our text. Shall we? Because, again, exciting action. And that's an interesting thing, right? I was about to say exciting action is about to ensue, except the most striking thing about this passage is that it doesn't. This is one of the things. Even if you totally forget about the film, right? Even if you've never seen the Peter Jackson film in your entire life, you are very likely to remember this scene, that is the attack on the dell under Weathertop by the Ringwraiths, as much more action-packed than it actually is. One of the things that I find so fascinating about it, when you stop and read it carefully and look at it slowly, is how little actually happens. That is to say, I mean, it's a significant event, lots of things happen, and yet, if you were like an outside observer, if you were watching like a security camera footage of the Dell attack on the Dell under Weathertop, you'd see almost nothing, right? And I don't just mean because some of the principles are invisible. Right? I'm not cheating that way. Even with full view of the invisible folks, very little happens. Not nothing. I mean, there's a stabbing, right? That's a legitimate piece of action. But apart from the stabbing, almost nothing happens in this chapter. And yet it is full of action and drama, but a particular kind of action and drama. And that is, I think, one of the most important things for us to focus on, for us to be seeing as we go through. But let's stop blathering about in general terms about the text, and let us actually look at the text. So tonight, when Ringwraiths attack, what is that like exactly? How do Ringwraiths attack? And if Ringwraiths are attacking you, what do you do? Like, we need to write a little book, right? How to survive what was that, like the Survivor's Guide? Those yellow books that used to be popular briefly, right? How do you survive a Ringwraith attack in the wilderness? We should be able to write a little handbook after today's class, hopefully. So, whoa! Okay, I'm not going to quite go that fast. All right, here we are. Now, this is what comes immediately after Strider's prose description, right? His prose synopsis of the Baron and Luthien story. As Strider was speaking, they watched his strange, eager face, dimly lit in the red glow of the wood fire. His eyes shone, and his voice was rich and deep. Above him was a black, starry sky. Suddenly a pale light appeared over the crown of Weathertop behind him. The waxing moon was climbing slowly above the hill that overshadowed them, and the stars above the hilltop faded. The story ended. The hobbits moved and stretched. "Look," said Merry, "the moon is rising. It must be getting late." The others looked up. Even as they did so, they saw on the top of the hill something small and dark against the glimmer of the moonrise. It was, perhaps, only a large stone or jutting rock shown up by the pale light. Perhaps. It might be. You can't totally rule out the possibility that what they were seeing was a large stone or jutting rock shown up by the pale light. It is, of course, conceivable. This is one of the most noticeable narrator interventions that I think we've seen in a while. Remember, we've been looking for those, right? Those moments when you can hear the narrator's voice and sort of see the narrator's touch here. And this is totally one of those moments, right? It was perhaps... come on now. There's no perhaps about this. The narrator, that is Frodo or Sam, is going to be fairly confident in retrospect what that was, right? Mike thinks that this is Frodo, not Sam. I'm inclined to agree. What is this? What is this that we're getting here? Why say this? Why does the narrator, be it Frodo or Sam, and I agree, Mike, my impulse would be to say Frodo as well. Why do this? Why tell it this way, right? There's a hint of I don't know, disingenuousness about that moment, right? You know, when the narrator's like, yeah, maybe it was, could have been, probably wasn't, but I'm not going to tell you, right? I think the way that this reads to me is that the narrator, whether we think of the narrator as Tolkien, the writer, or whether we think of the narrator as Frodo, who wrote the text, or even, you know, Finnegill, King's writer, the tone of that sentence, or the purpose of that sentence, seems to me to be to put us as readers in the position of the hobbits, right? That is, looking around and wondering and being unsure, right? A totally omniscient narrator, or at least a narrator speaking in an omniscient voice, would wreck the feeling of this scene, right? It's not just enough to tell us what's happening here. The goal is exactly, Sharon, giving voice to the thoughts of the hobbits, right? And this would be sort of least disingenuous of all, right? If we think about this from the point of view of Frodo the narrator, right? It was perhaps only a large stone or jutting rock shown up by the pale light, may very well be what he thought to himself at the time, right? In an attempt to reassure himself and not get too worried. Now, I don't know necessarily, right? I'm implying by the jokes that I'm making that it's almost certainly a Black Rider, and that the narrator, or the narrator whose perspective, the Hobbit whose perspective the narrator is taking, is simply, sort of messing with us here. However, it could be a rock, right? The point is they are afraid, and their fear is making them look at everything askance, right? The Black Riders really are closing in, right? The Ringwraiths are genuinely coming. It's not like they're just making stuff up, but they really don't know, in fact, whether it's the Black Riders, or whether that's the Black Riders, or are they over there, right? And it's not just because it's dark. This is a product of how the Black Riders are working on them. What we are seeing are the Black Riders taking effect. This is important, I think, for more than simply artistic purposes. It's important for artistic purposes. That is to say, Tolkien as writer, Frodo as narrator are both creating an important effect through this. But there's more to it than that. The Ringwraiths are attacking. Right now, the Ringwraiths are attacking. The Ringwraiths attack begins as soon as Strider stops speaking, right? And we can see that happen. The story ended. The hobbits moved and stretched. "Look," said Merry, "the moon is rising. It must be getting late." The others looked up. Even as they did so, they saw on the top of the hill something small and dark against the glimmer of the moonrise. As soon as they look up, right? So they're moving and stretching. Stretching as if they're waking up from sleep, right? And it's been so long that now the moon is rising. Notice it's most of the way through the night. It must be getting late, Merry says, right? So, this story's gone on for a while, right? And he has, Strider has kept them off for quite a while. But notice how the fear grips them right away. In a sense, whether that thing, the small dark thing on the top of the hill, is a Ringwraith or not, doesn't matter, right? What matters is that we are being shown their fear, that we're being shown their point of view, because that is their attack. they're not gonna come in. Do the Ringwraiths? The Ringwraiths don't use swords. They don't attack. There's nobody. Again, all due respect to Peter Jackson's adaptation of this scene, which I can totally get behind. I don't fault Peter Jackson. There are a lot of things that I complain about Peter Jackson. I don't complain about his treatment of the Weathertop scene much. But it makes sense. It makes sense. And if I were adapting it, I might possibly... I wouldn't do the same thing. But it's defensible. I think it's defensible, what he did with it. What Tolkien is depicting here is super difficult to do on screen. And taking this... What we are going to see is an almost entirely spiritual battle between the Ringwraiths and Aragorn and the Hobbits, and sort of translating that into a physical battle in which Aragorn comes in with the torch in one hand and his sword in the other hand and sword fights the Wraiths and physically sets them on fire. Makes sense. It makes sense as a way to kind of translate that into a visual medium. But again, it's important for us to realize the Ringwraith's weapon is fear. The fear that suddenly grips the hobbits when they look up and see this thing. Whether it's a rider or whether it's a rock, it doesn't matter. The fear that grips them shows the attack has begun. It's not about to begin. It has begun. This is it, right? Yeah. But I don't want to skip over the first paragraph. Somebody was saying earlier on, and Matthew, you're absolutely right, that we know from Crick Hollow that when they close in extremely slowly so they could easily be mistaken for rocks. Yeah. They move somewhere between the speeds of glaciers moving and rocks settling over the years. No, I mean, they're very patient, as we saw. Let's stand here and wait literally for hours is totally their move, right? Again, it's not just we're going to postpone our attack for hours. It is their attack, right? When they are investing the place with this increasing and increasingly intolerable pressure of fear, that's the Ringwraiths attacking. That's what it looks like. Anyway, okay. Eric was pointing out something similar about standing there, them attacking this the same way they did Crick Hollow, yeah. I want to go back to, let's see, somebody way earlier on talking about Aragorn. Yes, Fourth Dauntless, saying, I think we get here the first glimpse of Aragorn, King of Gondor in exile. Yeah, I agree. In this first paragraph there, yes, we have heard him. He's had, we've talked, of course, we spent a lot of time talking about Strider's different persona, right? And in particular, the very active front that he puts up in Bree, even apparently to fake speech, like a fake accent that he puts on, is how I understand Frodo's words that we talked about. You started off talking like the Breelanders and now you're not, right? He dropped his accent, he dropped his dialect. Anyway, we've seen him and we've seen him refer to that persona in the third person, right? Talking about Strider. But I agree with you, Fourth Dauntless. We've not seen like the real Aragorn, right? We've seen Strider, the vagabond ranger, right? We've seen, Longshanks and Stick It Not Strider. That's unjust, right? That insult by Bill Ferny is unjust, not to mention hypocritical. But it's also fitting, right? I mean, he's been cultivating, if not exactly that reputation, a reputation which might make that particular shoe look like it fits, right? So, he does have a rather rascally look, doesn't he, right? So we've got Strider the Rascal, persona number one. Persona number two, though, wasn't exactly Aragorn, son of Arathorn, heir of Numenor, right? It was like Strider, the elf friend of Gandalf, right? And it was still not really clear. Remember, Frodo is gonna be surprised when he learns that Strider is one of the old kings, right? He's not even gotten that. He doesn't process that at all. So okay, he's not a rascal. He's not a criminal. He's not dodgy. He's an elf friend. He's Gandalf's friend. He's trustworthy. And skilled in the wild. Oh, okay, great. All right. And apparently learned in old lore, as they're learning here, right? And he's been to Rivendell. But again, elf friend, that fits, right? Okay, elf friend, he's been to Rivendell. He's learned lots of things. That's, of course, going to be something that the Hobbits are going to, wouldn't you think? The Hobbits would take that for granted, right? That is to say, take for granted that if you are an elf friend and have been to Rivendell, the logical conclusion is that you're going to become learned, right? Because they have exactly one prototype for that, right? Look what happened to Bilbo, right? Bilbo goes off and he visits Rivendell and he becomes an elf friend, and then what happens, right? Next thing you know, the dude is composing poetry and telling stories of the elder days and like translating stuff into and out of Elvish. So yeah, I mean, like, it's what happens, like when you become an elf friend and visit Rivendell. So when he's like, yeah, I've been to Rivendell, and they know, and they know he's an elf friend and a friend of Gandalf, then sure, okay, yeah, learn it in old lore, that fits, it makes sense. But yes, I do think that what we are seeing peeking out here is the strange eagerness of his face. The eagerness, I think, is the really important thing, right? The line of Tenuvio, remember, is what he's just been talking about. And there he is talking about his inheritance, right? He is thinking about his inheritance. And he's thinking about Arwen, of course. But he's also thinking about his inheritance. It's not only, I'm thinking about my girlfriend, right? That he like makes him look all dreamy and eager, right? I mean, there's that too. But there's more than that as well. This is also his entire heritage. And of course, those two things are all wrapped up together. On the first hand, you've got like his girlfriend who looks just like Luthien, which is a good look. And then on the other hand, you've got, and she's of course a close descendant of Luthien. And then you've got his line through Luthien that goes all the way back to Luthien, but all the way through the Númenórean kings, which is also very important to him personally. And of course, the two things are directly linked, because only when he has attained the throne and restored the honor of his line will he be granted the hand of Arwen in marriage. So, it all kind of comes together there. But I think again, if we imagine him here to be Strider to be only thinking about, I'm thinking about Beren and Luthien, I'm thinking about me and Arwen, I'm having a little like private romantic reverie here. Yes, he is, but it's more than that. It's not only that, and I think we'll miss stuff if we think only of that. Okay. All right, let's keep going here. Above him was a black starry sky. Oh, Tom, you had a really good comment about this. Sorry, I'm scattered all over the place here tonight. So Tom was saying he's trying to decide if there's anything to be made of the fading of the stars and the attack of the Wraiths. When thinking back to Gildor's folk singing to the stars and the Wraiths running away. I mean, it's the connection is attractive. I agree, Tom. I mean, the thing I'm resistant to here is that, of course, the stars fade because the moon comes out and the moon is bright, right? So the idea that the coming of the moon is the sort of reversal, right? Elves singing as the stars come out, the elf singing being associated with both the flight of the Ringwraiths and the emergence of the stars, right? We saw both of those associations with the singing of Gildor's people back in chapter 3. And so the idea that his song, or Aragorn's song and story ceases and the stars go away and the Ringwraiths come. So if you just kind of plot it out like that, they look like symmetrical opposites, right? But I don't think it works really well when you kind of put a little bit more pressure on it, though, because again, it's the stars are only going away because the moon's rising, and I can't think that like moonrise is a bad thing, like, and this signifies the like dominion, the time of the dominion of the Ringwraiths. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me, even though, okay, moonrise, we get the whole Minas Ithil connection, but again, they're not associated with the moon. They corrupted the Tower of the Moon, right? It's not the Tower of the Moon anymore. They wrecked the Tower of the Moon. So I don't think that would work either. So I'm not quite sure what to make of it. Tom, I mean, the significance of the stars, above him was a black starry sky. Definitely seems important, right? At least as sort of the framing of Aragorn's story, right? One thing I guess I will say, Tom, it's not about the parallel exactly. What this kind of makes me think of, it's almost like a recapitulation of the rising of the moon, right? Like Aragorn being framed in a black starry sky is almost like a brief memory of the elder days, right? Before the rising of the sun and moon. So something like a brief glimpse at or recollection of the days of comparative peace, right? While Melkor was bound, before Melkor's unchaining, and the tempestuous events which followed and which led to, among other things, the making of the sun and moon in response. It's, again, I don't lean too hard there on that parallel either. Again, like implying like the rising of the moon is a bad thing or allied with evil or something. That doesn't really work. But the glimpse of Strider telling the story just under a black starry sky with no moon and no sun in it is a little bit of a callback. That seems to me a little bit safer. We're getting this little breath of the ancient world here, right? Yeah. And yeah, Matt, I agree. It isn't quite moonrise. The moon has been up for hours, but blocked by Weathertop. Yeah. Right, exactly. It's only moonrise because they're way under a really, really tall hill. It's true. Though again, it's like moonrise, right? The way that the stars fade as the moon comes into view. So, yeah. And Irendis, yeah, absolutely. Several of you are reminding me that stars on a black field also nicely recall the stars of the Dunedain, right? The symbol of the standard, the battle standard that Aragorn will one day raise as king, right? So yes, that little vision, that little glimpse that we get of Aragorn's face framed by the black starry sky, the black starry sky looming up above his head, is like the standard that he's going to raise. I like that. Again, especially since, as I was very strongly agreeing with Fourth Dauntless, we are, I think, getting a glimpse of Aragorn, son of Arathorn, future king of Gondor, here in this passage, I think, really for the first time. Yeah, cool. Mad Violinist is remembering Bombadil's story that ended under the stars. Yeah, that's within the text of the Fellowship of the Ring itself. That's the clearest thing, right? I mean, was referring straight back to the Silmarillion, but we have seen that, right? We have gotten that glimpse of just the black starry skies back at the beginning and associated with the oldest of days by Tom Bombadil, which seemed to be a time of peace, right before the Dark Lord came from outside. I mean, there's some chronology issues there, but still, that concept of the black starry skies being associated with a very ancient and yet peaceful time, I think we can get from Tom Bombadil's vision there as well. Yeah, good. Yeah. Okay. Ardent Crayon, you were asked a really good question here on Twitter before. Good to see you again, by the way. I'm not seeing you on Twitter for a while. But anyway, I've forgotten it, but like 2 comments ago, you asked a really interesting question that I was going to address, but I was in the middle of something and now I've forgotten. So post the really interesting thing that you were just recently talking about, and I'll just start reposting things, and I'll see it again. Interesting. Harnuth says, if you just look at a bit of that sentence, right? A pale light appeared over the crown. Again, like the word, the choice of the word crown, as we are looking up above Aragorn's head here, seems perhaps more than purely coincidental. Yeah. No, I hear that. Yeah. Okay, cool. Anyway, so several people have been asking, did Aragorn's story keep them away? Like, have the Black Riders been like waiting for the Beren and Luthien story to end before they could attack? On the one hand, it's hard to say. On the one hand, you could argue, no, this is their MO, right? This is what they do. This is how they operate. This is how they operate. They creep up, stand there, fill the place with fear, right? And then will apparently move in at the end. At least that's what they did at Crick Hollow. So the fact that they've surrounded the camp and are just standing there for a really long time is not a priori proof that they're being held off, right? This is could be just part of the offensive, right? You are not repelling me. I'm just choosing not to attack yet, right? Could very well be the Ringwraiths' riposte to any suggestion that they are being repelled by the story of Beren and Luthien. However, what I think is unquestionable is that if they have been attacking, it's not been working, right? We know that their attack takes the form of this like stifling fear that is supposed to be building, and it hasn't been, right? The hobbits have been effectually protected by Strider and his song and his story from the fear of the Ringwraiths. It's very clear from how they're moving and stretching, from Merry's comment, right? The moon is rising. It must be getting late. This is not how somebody who has been under spiritual assault by the Ringwraiths for several hours would speak, right? So whether they're waiting to attack or whether they are attempting to attack, but their attack has been foiled, either way, it kind of looks exactly the same, in fact, in either case. But I do think it's pretty clear that the Ringwraiths' spiritual assault is not able to start until after he finishes the story of Beren and Luthien. I don't think it's a coincidence. Certainly. There is one possible reading of it, right? Which says they just happen to show up then, right? So he's been telling the story of Beren and Luthien, and by coincidence, just when he finishes the story of Beren and Luthien is when they happen to show up, right? And then they start attacking. That reading, I reject. I don't believe that at all. Especially since I think that we have some reason to think that Strider already knew they were there and possibly in earshot right before he started his story. Yeah, exactly. So exactly, hope and courage counter fear, Matt. That's exactly it. And the fact is, and again, this is the thing that's important to think about. This is why my own reading of this passage increasingly is, it's not that the story has prevented them from beginning their attack. They have begun their... The fight has been going on. The entire time Aragorn has been talking to them. They've been fighting. It's just that Aragorn's been winning, right? The conflict is already underway because the conflict is always and from the beginning a spiritual conflict. It's the conflict between hope and fear, right? And And so far, Hope, as long as he's been telling the story of Beren and Luthien, Hope has been winning, right? And fear has been held at bay. Now, again, it's not that the attack is starting. It's just that now, for the first time, they're really aware of it. Blue Wizard, exactly. She says, I can't imagine Strider would have taken the time to tell that story at that particular time if it didn't have an effect on the battle. No, exactly. He knows what he's doing. I believe very much he knows what he's doing. Think how careful he is in selecting which story he's going to tell. When we talked about this, right? When he rejects the story of Gil-galad and instead goes to the story of Beren and Luthien, there are good reasons for that. James Liebeck says he is a mighty singer then. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd buy that. I mean, he's not a mighty singer in the same way that Tom Bombadil is a mighty singer, or even Old Man Willow, of whom Tom Bombadil said that, right? But yeah, no, there's definitely power in Aragorn's song. Absolutely. Yeah, good. Yeah. Yeah, JJ is quoting Ephesians 6, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. This is that kind of battle. Absolutely. And if you don't understand the conflict with the Ringwraiths, in these kinds of terms, like in the terms of spiritual conflict like this, then I think it's fairly clear that you're not getting the Ringwraiths, really. Okay. Boomfall's wondering how many of the Wraiths knew the story already. Like, are the Wraiths getting drawn in? like, we can't wait to hear more. Yeah, good question. I mean, probably they knew it. I mean, they've been around a long time, but they probably never heard it told like this before. I'm guessing that the story of Beren and Luthien probably not told in exactly the same way by Sauron and his lieutenants. Yeah, Tarlonial, they probably had heard some Sauron twisted version, or maybe I can't decide whether Sauron would make up a different version of the story, or whether he would just ban it, just like not allow it to be said. I could see either way. But anyway, yeah, Mike goes with ban. I can definitely see. Again, I could see it. I could definitely see it either way, that he because especially it was not just a story of his. I mean, it was embarrassing, right? I mean, Sauron got embarrassed during the story of Beren and Luthien. Yeah, as Erocheb says, he doesn't let them say Sauron, so I imagine Huon is right out. Yeah, very likely. Very likely. Anyway, okay. Well, he could always expurgate that bit, right? But probably the story of Melkor getting thrown on his face isn't going to do him any favors. It's not going to be any big bonus to Mordor morale either. Anyhow, okay. Let's keep going. Back to that last paragraph there. Even as they did so, even as they looked up, they saw on the top of the hill. I love that, even as they did so. Showing you how instantaneously the fear falls upon them, right? And again, the more I'm hearing the suspicious music of my having AFK'd out. The more I read and think about this passage, the more I like the fact that it is being coy with us in that last sentence. Because again, as I suggested before, it doesn't really truly matter whether it's a Black Rider or not, right? What we see is their fear taking effect. But let's keep going. Sam and Mary got up and walked away from the fire. First of all, can we just stop there for a second? That's kind of a big deal, isn't it? right? Sam and Merry got up and walked away from the fire. This shows their frame of mind. This shows how thoroughly Aragorn has succeeded in his job, how much he's winning this battle so far. Here they are in the dark under Weathertop, and the Ringwraiths are already closing in all around, right? And so here's Sam and Merry like, oh, I'm just going to wander away from the fire off into the darkness, right? You know, like you do, just stretching my legs, right? Those are not terrified hobbits, obviously, right? Frodo and Pippin remained seated in silence. Strider was watching the moonlight on the hill intently. All seemed quiet and still, but Frodo felt a cold dread creeping over his heart now that Strider was no longer speaking. He huddled closer to the fire. At that moment, Sam came running back from the edge of the dell. I don't know what it is, he said, but I suddenly felt afraid. I dursn't go outside this dell for any money. I felt that something was creeping up the slope. Did you see anything? Asked Frodo, springing to his feet. No, sir. I saw nothing, but I didn't stop to look. I saw something, said Merry, or I thought I did. Away westward, where the moonlight was falling on the flats beyond the shadows of the hilltops, I thought there were 2 or 3 black shapes. They seemed to be moving this way. Keep close to the fire with your faces outward, cried Strider. Get some of the longer sticks ready in your hands. Okay. Now, one of the things that I think is a really important tell here. Strider was watching the moonlight on the hill intently. We have a pretty clear track record of when Strider is when Strider is really paying attention. He plays things pretty close to the vest, right? You know, we saw him, for instance, with the lights above Weathertop, right? Not saying a fraction more than a small fraction of what he was thinking, right? I think this is one of those times when the narrator is telegraphing to us what Strider is probably thinking, but he's not saying anything, right? If Strider is watching the moonlight on the hill intently, I'm thinking it's because there's something to see there, right? He's not just like, I really like watching moonlight on a hillside. Don't you? Right? No, there's something there, right? So I'm now feeling fairly convinced that those were definitely not rocks, right? As I said, it doesn't really matter whether they are Ringwraiths or not, but they're totally Ringwraiths, right? Strider is watching them exactly for Thoughtless. I do think he's considering that small black shape quite carefully. So, okay. Why does he tell them to grab sticks? He says that fire is their friend in the wilderness, and that the creatures of Sauron do not love it. Okay. Sauron can put fire to his evil purposes, but his servants do not love it. Okay. Does this mean they are flammable? Does this mean that they have damage vulnerability to fire type damage? Right? Is that what we're imagining here? No, I don't think that's what we're imagining here. I really don't think that he is telling them to pick up sticks out of the fire, because the sticks out of the fire are very likely to damage the fire, damage the Ringwraiths horribly, right? Are the Ringwraiths afraid of fire? It's possible. Do they avoid light? Yes. They're stronger in darkness? Yeah. So just like having light between you and them is something, right? Is going to be enough. And we know there is something about fire. We will see something of that later on. It's true, Lady Schmedviolak, they don't have Holocaust cloaks, so there's that. Yes, exactly, as JJ corrects me. See, it's not the fire damage, it's the radiant damage. Well, I'm glad we cleared that up, JJ. Thank you for that. No, but here's one of the points that I would make. One of the points that I would make here, it's not about weapons. Because guess what? Guess how many people are going to strike physical blows. Guess how much combat is going to happen, right? We're not rolling for initiative here, folks, right? Nobody, almost nobody on their action is going to take combat-related action in this entire sequence, right? Notice that the hobbits also have swords. They're not using those, right? It's he says, keep close to the fire with your faces outward. Get some of the longer sticks ready in your hands. I think the important thing here, it's about them. This is a spiritual battle. It's not a physical battle. It's not even a radiant elemental battle. This is a spiritual battle. Exactly, Karita. It's to make the hobbits feel braver. If they are facing the enemy, right? If they are prepared to defy the enemy, they've been told that the enemy fears fire, right? Or at least he implied that the enemy, he said they don't love it, which is, but anyway, like, so, okay, so that's a good, so in other words, he said to them, hey, you're not helpless, right? You're small, you're puny, they're like huge, scary, shadowy, undead things, but you're not helpless, right? They don't like fire. So you've got fire, you're good. So put your back to the fire, your side, you're standing there side to side, shoulder to shoulder with your companions, a flaming brand before you, the fire behind you. This is the best spiritual position that they can be in, right? This is the most hopeful, the most positive place where they can be. And I think that that's so much more important than the flames, right? Than the actual pointed stick involved. So yeah, JJ, exactly. The flaming brands are a light shining against the darkness. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Karita, exactly. Who doesn't feel braver when they're holding a flaming stick? Try it sometime. It totally boosts your courage. I absolutely agree. So yeah, this seems to me a much more important dynamic of this passage. Now, the Hobbit Exchange in the middle of this passage. What do you make of this? First of all, there's Frodo's question. Did you see anything? Right now, Sam's report shows us that he's very sensible, as we've seen so many times before, right? That his response to Frodo's question, "Did you see anything?" "No, sir, I saw nothing, but I didn't stop to look." Right? That's classic Sam right there, right? He wasn't thinking of his dignity. He wasn't thinking about what he would report back when he came. He was just like, okay, I'm not gonna stay out here for any money, right? I don't care. Yeah, Mike, I agree. Frodo seems to be still looking for physical dangers. Or what? Is he doubting? Is this Frodo trying to... Strider has no doubts about what's going on, right? Strider knows what's happening. Strider is not looking at the hillside and saying, is that a rock? Maybe it's just a rock. It's probably just a rock, right? Tell me that's just a rock, right? This is not what Strider is thinking. He's looking at the hillside and being like, one black rider there, one black rider there, right? He knows what's going on. He is not playing that kind of game with himself. He doesn't seem to be, whereas I think Frodo, and what was being reflected by the narrator in that earlier the perhaps sentence, right? And what we're hearing from Frodo here, did you see anything, right? Is this Frodo like in his almost panicked hope that they're not actually being attacked by black riders right now? Is he looking for a loophole, right? Like, okay, so that sounds really suspicious, Sam. Like you suddenly were overcome by this like really powerful, sense of fear outside the dell, but like it totally could still not be the black riders, right? I mean, if you didn't see it, like then that doesn't prove it, right? And I think that's not hope speaking, right? That's panic speaking. That's the fear talking. That's him rationalizing, attempting to rationalize. That's uncomfortable. Isn't that uncomfortable? Right? Because that kind of rationalization correlates with the influence of the ring. Right now, I'm not saying this is the ring speaking here, but I am saying that we know Frodo's on shaking ground when he's doing that kind of rationalization. And Matt, I agree. I do think we're learning a lot about Merry's adventurous spirit. Remember, this is Merry Brandybuck, Mr. It was no fair going off and having adventures without me, right? And he's kind of proving that he meant what he said, right? We saw him follow trail the Black Riders in streets in Bree, much to Strider's amazement. Even though, he does say that he seemed to be drawn somehow, but still Strider seems to be impressed. And now Merry, he did stop and look, right? Sam might have turned and booked it, but Merry stayed and looked, and he thinks he saw something. He's not really sure. But again, how do you see a shadow in the darkness exactly? Not really surprising that he can't completely guarantee what he saw or didn't see. But notice what he sees is not the Black Riders approaching right on the edge of the dell. He sees them closing in across the field, right across the flats, under the on the other side there. Yeah. Anyway, so Frodo, you can see the mindset that Frodo is in, right? I think he's trying to be strong. I think he wants to remain positive, but he's obviously fearing and near the edge of panic, hoping to be told that things are better than he thinks. Strider has nothing to do with that, right? Strider's not going to rationalize at all. Strider's response is, keep close to the fire with your faces outward, right? That they are coming, right? They are here. Yeah. I thought there's something else I wanted to say about the earlier passage, but I think, I wanted to respond to whose question was it? Somebody asked a very excellent question a little while back. Tiber, why doesn't Strider keep telling stories? I don't know. That would be my question for Strider as well. Strider, what the heck? Why did you keep telling stories? It was working. You were winning, right? God, there's plenty of them, right? Can I pull out something? Surely. I mean, Baron and Luthien was an awesome choice. I mean, that's like, you really nailed it with that one. But, the second best story. Come on, give it a shot, right? Yeah, he doesn't do it, and I don't know that I have an explanation for that. I just don't. I don't know why he would do that. I can't see anything in the text that would seem to suggest an answer to it. Tell stories only usable once per day. JJ, yeah, exactly. He has to take a long rest before he can tell another story of that potency again, right? Yeah, you can't just do that all the time. Yeah. Sorry, all the role playing jokes tonight. Yeah, can you tell I've been playing D&D with my kids? Anyway, it is possible. Okay, so Ambrosius Aurelianus says the storytelling might only have been a temporary defense, a slowing of the enemy's advance and a weakening of their influence. I don't see anything to suggest that simply telling hopeful stories is enough to prevent the Ringwraiths from attacking and stabbing people with Morgul blades. Right? Would it? Has it reached the limit of its efficacy anyway? Tiber, I would still say, what have you got to lose? Give it a shot, right? So, the whole, I'm not even going to bother with story number, with, my second best story. I have a hard time getting behind that. I really do. But, yeah, I mean, one notices, for instance, that when Gandalf was surrounded by the Ringwraiths on top of Weathertop, he went for explosions. rather than stories, right? He didn't just like try to filibuster the Ringwraiths off of Weathertop. So yeah, maybe that's enough to suggest by itself that like there comes a point where you can, like in the preamble, because remember, you can think about going back to the Crick Hollow model that we've gotten for Ringwraith attacks. It's the only model we have of this kind of thing. We did see two phases, right? Phase 1 was the Siege of Fear, and then standing there for hours surrounding the house. And then stage 2 was Invasion, right? And perhaps the conclusion that we're supposed to come to is that stories like Unto the Beren and Luthien story are fine for phase 1, right? The Siege of Fear part, but it's not gonna stop them barging in when they deem that it's time, when the hour strikes for the invasion. I don't know. But like I say, we have really no data about this, but Tiber, I think it is a really excellent question, because it's the first bit works so well that it is almost fuddling that he doesn't try it a second time. Now, Karita, that is an excellent point. Gandalf didn't have hobbits to tell stories to, so maybe that's a difference. So maybe if you really need to defend yourself in the wild, Karita, this can be part of the worst case scenario book, right? Okay, so worst case scenario, Ringwraith attack. Bring an audience with you. Right? Ideally an impressionable, inexperienced audience, right? That you can tell stories who will just like, they eat up the story of Beren and Luthien on toast, right? Because that reaction is a big part of it, right? Whereas Gandalf made the classic blunder of going off on his own, so he had to fall back on mere explosions because he didn't have anybody to tell the story to. I'm loving this theory, Karita. I say we run with that. Pontine, I guess he could have told stories to his horse, but it's not the same, right? Shadowfax probably knew the stories anyway, but JJ was asking, if you don't have a hobbit with you, can you just bring a bolster with the brown mat and try to convince the Ringwraiths that you're telling stories to a hobbit? I love that. Yeah, tuck it into the bedroll, right? The bolster. I don't think so. I'm thinking this in the spiritual conflict here. I don't think that the will of the responsive will of the bolster is gonna do the trick. Probably. Yeah, probably so. Anyway, okay, yeah. You didn't name him Odo. Yeah, absolutely. If you have a fake hobbit that you're bringing along with you, if you've got a bolster and a mat, you should name him Odo. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. Yeah, Boomful says the material component of Strider's, hope spell is a live hobbit. Yeah, exactly. Fortunately, Boomful, the material component is not consumed in the casting of that spell there. Yeah, that's very good. Now Karita wants receptive bolster to be a D&D magical item. Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I like that. Okay. All right. Excellent. Yeah. It could be a Magic the Gathering card, James. Yeah. Receptive bolster. Talk about your inside joke cards, right? Boy, think of how you'd have to how much explaining you'd have to do if you pulled that one out of your deck. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. Let's do a third slide tonight. Why not? For a breathless time they sat there, silent and alert, with their backs turned to the wood fire, each gazing into the shadows that encircled them. Nothing happened. It's my little synopsis for the whole attack. Nothing happened. There was no sound or movement in the night. Frodo stirred, feeling that he must break the silence. He longed to shout out aloud. "Hush!" whispered Strider. "What's that?" gasped Pippin at the same moment. Over the lip of the little dell, on the side away from the hill, they felt, rather than saw, a shadow rise. One shadow, or more than one. They strained their eyes, and the shadows seemed to grow. Soon there could be no doubt. 3 or 4 tall black figures were standing there on the slope, looking down on them. So black were they that they seemed like black holes in the deep shade behind them. Frodo thought that he heard a faint hiss as of venomous breath, and felt a thin, piercing chill. Then the shapes slowly advanced. Okay. Now, several things here. Notice Frodo's response. Now, great question. Do I think that do I think that the ring wants Frodo to reveal himself? Frodo's impulse to shout out loud and stuff, is this ring induced? No, I don't think so. Or rather, I think we have no reason to think that. I think we have no evidence for that. Every thought or temptation that Frodo has isn't from the ring, right? And this doesn't have any of the markers that we have come to associate with ring temptations. But what it does seem to do is when we... This is that cloud of fear, right? This is that... they're coming. He sees them. Strider sees them approaching, right? We know they're there. So what do? Nothing. They stand out of sight and wait and wait. And the pressure builds and builds and builds. This is what they were trying to do to Fatty Bolger, right? But failed because Fatty Bolger booked it, right? He was too smart for that. Nothing happened. No sound or movement. And yet the attack is ongoing, right? It's not about to begin. The attack is ongoing, and Frodo is becoming a casualty of this attack now, right? That feeling that he must break the silence, that desire to shout out loud. Now, it would depend on what he shouted as to whether or not that was a success or a failure. We have seen, who was it who was talking about this? Tilion was saying that Frodo's instinct in the Old Forest was to run around and scream too. Yes, but remember, Tilion, in the Old Forest, the song that he ultimately sang when he couldn't stand it anymore, it was Pippin who was just like, just let us through, will you? Right? Pippin felt that pressure and cried out aloud as well, breaking the silence. Frodo, when he felt that, sang his song, right? And his song, as we saw, was a song of defiance. It was a song about the defeat of the forest, right? All that stuff about ending and failing that they didn't like. So when he did break the silence, he was at least doing so defiantly, not in despair, right? Whereas again, Pippin's impulse, when he breaks the silence in the Old Forest, he was just crying out like, let us pass, will you? Right? That's close to despair. Right? Begging to be let through. If you're talking that way, the trees are winning, right? The fear is overtaking you. What would he have shouted? I wonder, right? Would he have shouted something like Pippin did in the Old Forest, or would he have done something like, maybe a song like he sang in the Old Forest might have been good here, right? How about another refrain of that? Do you remember any of that Baron and Luthien song? I've heard what, the leaves were long, the grass was green. Come on, let's do it. Sing about the hemlock umbles, or something. That would be, not bad, I think. Yeah, you're right, Mike. We will see him cry something out later on. Right, which is definitely a good move on his part. I'm not sure that that's what he was thinking of crying out here. But, and Tilion, you were thinking about when they met Tom Bombadil and he was yelling, help. Yeah, there he is running around and yelling. Yes, exactly. That's right. Okay, anyway. Interesting that Strider whispers hush. Now, it's clear that he says hush at the same time Pippin gasps, what's that? Right? So both of them clearly hear something that Frodo doesn't hear, right? They are hearing the boots of the riders approaching the edge of the dell. But it seems to me awful coincidental, right? I'm going to go with... So my reading is that Frodo was about to shout something embarrassing. right? This was going to be much more of the, oh, let us through, will you, line of thinking than it is the, oh, Elbereth Gilthonia line of thinking, right? I think. And the reason I think that is the juxtaposition of Frodo's desire to shout with Strider saying, hush, right? Now, again, he's not saying hush. His hush, I don't think literally translates to, you mustn't shout out in that spirit, right? I don't think it's what he's saying. But the coincidence is a little bit much for me to let go of. So I think that it's sort of usefully important, right? That Strider happens to say hush at that particular moment when Frodo is thinking of crying out. And it does rather suggest to me that had he cried out there, it would have not been a good thing to have cried out. Yeah. Yeah, good. Yeah, no, JJ, exactly. Hush. He isn't saying hush because he thinks the riders will miss them if they're quiet. This is not about stealth, right? That's why he lit the fire in the first place. Yeah. It's, yeah, I agree. Now, and I agree, many of you were talking about how terrifying that last paragraph is, and I agree. There are so many things about this that are really creepy, right? A shadow rise, one shadow, or more than one. Again, notice the narrator bringing us into that fearful perspective of what it was like to be a hobbit in this moment. You can't even tell how many of them there are. You have a vague sense that there's more than one. Notice something? Tactically speaking, how do they approach? All together. They're coming from lots of different directions. That's very clear. At least one is up on the hill. At least two or three are approaching across the flats, right? They have the place surrounded. If they were coming in for combat, right, they would come in from all different angles because they have this dell totally surrounded, right? They don't. They form up and they come in together, 3 or 4 tall black figures standing there on the slope looking down on them, right? Because the Ringwraiths are stronger together, we know. But also, it's not that kind of a fight, right? And I forget who it was, somebody was talking about like the element of surprise and how this whole fear tactic that they do robs them of the element of surprise. The element of surprise is for people who want to stick swords into folks, right? If your goal is to shoot folks full of arrows or stick them with pointed metal objects, then yes, it is to your advantage to catch them by surprise, right? Because if they're not going to defend themselves, they're easier to poke with things, right? But that's not the goal, right? That's not the point. Them being aware is far more valuable, right? They're not trying to surprise anybody because they're not trying to fight them, or rather, again, not physically. Yeah, exactly. Erichem, Ringwraiths never approach their foes single file in order to hide their numbers, right? They never. They're the opposite of the Sand People. Yeah. So Arden Crayon asks, I don't think the poison knife was the original plan. Oh yeah, no, the poison knife is the original plan, but it's not combat, right? You don't have to score a critical hit with the Morgul blade. If this goes down appropriately, so here's how I think this is supposed to go down, right? Here's how the Witch King drew this up. First, you surround the dell until they are completely stiff with fear, right? Then you come in formation, right? All together. So that you are, the Ringwraiths all are, sort of combining their power together, and you approach them, and there's nothing they can do, right? You get the Ringwraith, you get the ring bearer, right, to single out himself, then you stab him like a sacrifice, not like a fencer, right? This is not like, you stole my father's ring, prepare to die, right? This is not how the Witch King is approaching this. He wants to stab a victim, right? He is going to make sacrifice of Frodo so that Frodo can join them, like instantly, so that Frodo Wraith can bear the ring with them back to Mordor. I'm pretty sure that's how the Witch King drew this up, right? So the stabbing was always part of the plan. Combat, never part of the plan. Yeah. Yeah, exactly, Sam. Yeah, they want to be seen. The Ringwraiths want to be seen so they can be feared. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, and yeah, I agree, Matt. I also love the foreshadowing of the piercing chill in Frodo's heart. Right, that is not coincidental. Right, notice how and I don't think it's. I'm not just saying I don't think it's coincidental on Tolkien's part. Right, I think it's very much not coincidental. I think it's very active foreshadowing on Tolkien's part. I mean, on the Witch King's part. Right, the particular fear that he is trying to inspire is like a warm-up act, right, for the stabbing he's going to do. Right, I am going to first I am going to pierce your heart with terror. Right, so that you, in hopelessness, horror, and despair, yield yourself to me, right? Because you know there is nothing you can do to resist, and it's completely hopeless, right? And when you do, I'm gonna stab the Morgul blade straight into your heart, right? And I am going to make physical and as well as spiritual, right, that piercing chill of fear in your heart. Yeah, Matt says it's the same MO as the Barrow, the Barrow Wights. Yeah, it's very similar. I think actually a really close comparison of the attack of the Barrow Wight and the attack of the Ringwraiths here would be very fruitful. There's a lot of things, of course, that we could notice. Hey, that sounds like a great Myth Moot or Regional Moot paper. Somebody should totally write that paper and then present it. Do a close comparison. That sounds great. It is a moot point. That's a great moot point, JJ. Totally agree. Yeah. Exactly. Art and Crayon, they want the hobbits to respond like terrified animals. Absolutely. Yeah. To freeze. Like if the hobbits go Tharn, they have won. The Ringwraiths have won. That's what they want to do. Okay. Sorry, Watership Down reference. If you don't get that, but been making all the Monty Python and D&D references tonight. Had to throw in a little Watership Down there as well. So black were they that they seemed like black holes in the deep shade behind them. The background is black, right, pitch black, but they are so dark that they look like holes in the blackness behind them. Yeah. Darker than the darkness. Exactly, Fourth Dauntless, exactly. They're literally darker than the darkness, just like the Barrow Wight. That's, of course, as you guys will remember, what Tom Bombadil called the Barrow Wight, right? So what's his name? Austin Jeffords on Twitter here. So how close are the Wights and the Nazgul? First of all, keep in mind as if we read that. In the Mythgard Academy class that we did on the Return of the Shadow, one of the things that we learned there is from the early drafts, they were the same. Like, they were identified. He thought the Barrow Wights came first. He invented the Barrow Wights way back when he wrote the poem of The Adventures of Tom Bombadil. So his idea was that the Ringwraiths originally were Barrow Wights. They were Barrow Wights on horses riding around. And then he decided that they're not exactly the same. But again, if we were to do that comparison, if somebody were to make what JJ characterized as a moot point there, doing a close comparison of the Barrow Wight and the Ringwraith here, the Barrow Wight's attack in the Barrow specifically, and the Ringwraith's attack here on Weathertop, I think that we would see there's a lot of connection between them. They work very similarly. Yeah, interesting. Matt points out that there's a third level of foreshadowing, right? There's Tolkien, the author, there's the Witch King, and there's Frodo, the narrator, who's telling the story and knows how this stuff turns out. Yeah, agreed. Arden Cran, I agree. When you can see very clear trends in how the kinds of effects that the bad guys have, right? With the Balrog, that as you mentioned, it's not exactly the same, but we will certainly see some similarities when we get there, right? Not too long from now, right? We're practically there already. Yeah, cool. Yeah, good. Oh, Ingwe is looking ahead to the Mirror of Galadriel, and the description when the eye shows up, it's going to describe it. It's going to use some of this same language. As dark as if a hole had opened in the world of sight, is what Frodo describes seeing in the mirror before the eye appears. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, cool. Okay, so... Oops. No, hang on. Yeah, all right, that's where we were. Sorry. And their breath, yes. So the fact that they are shadow, you can't even tell how many of them there are. I mean, they're right there. They're like a couple of yards away, right? And yet you can't tell how many of them there are, right? Because they're darker than the darkness, and yet they have boots that make sounds, and yet you can hear their breathing, right? And not only hear it, as a venomous breath, and felt a thin, piercing chill, right? Which comes from their breath, right? That's the effect that their breath has. That's the mechanism by which the Witch King is doing his foreshadowing, right, of what he's going to do to Frodo's heart. Yeah. Fourth Dauntless, yes, I do think that indicates or sort of foreshadows the action of the Black Breath. We're not going to get that clearly, explained or described for a while here, but yeah, I do think that's what we're seeing there. Okay, sorry, I'm convincing myself we have time for one more slide face. We totally do. But do we have time for this slide? Yeah, we do. Terror overcame Pippin and Merry, and they threw themselves flat on the ground. That's what they did. So when their initiative comes up, throw themselves flat on the ground was their combat action that round. Sam shrank to Frodo's side. That's his action. Frodo, whose initiative was lower than everybody else's. Sorry, I'll stop making jokes. Frodo was hardly less terrified than his companions. He was quaking as if he was bitter cold, but his terror was swallowed up in a sudden temptation to put on the ring. The desire to do this laid hold of him, and he could think of nothing else. He did not forget the barrow, nor the message of Gandalf, but something seemed to be compelling him to disregard all warnings, and he longed to yield. Not with the hope of escape, or of doing anything, either good or bad. He simply felt that he must take the ring and put it on his finger. He could not speak. He felt Sam looking at him, as if he knew that his master was in some great trouble, but he could not turn towards him. He shut his eyes and struggled for a while, but resistance became unbearable, and at last he slowly drew out the chain and slipped the ring on the forefinger of his left hand. Okay. Now, so it is clear Pippin and Merry are overcome with the fear, and no blame to them. I'm not going to be trying to diss on Merry and Pippin for what they're doing here, and I'm not going to make fun of them, nor of Sam. Notice that Sam's faithfulness and his desire to stand by his master. Remember, this is, Sam, those Black Riders will have to ride over me, Gamgee, right? And yet, when it comes to it, and he's confronted by the Black Riders here in the Dell, all he can do is shrink to Frodo's side. He's still standing. He doesn't throw himself down, right? But all he can do is sort of cower next to Frodo here. The big question is what we do with this, as Austin Jeffords is asking here. Is this the ring? Is this the ring, or is this the wraith? What is happening here? On the one hand, so let's look at things. We get all kinds of ring markers here, right? It's clear that the ring is involved in some way, right? Notice that even Frodo connects it with other times when he has been tempted, right? He did not forget the barrow nor the message of Gandalf. Those should remind us of 2 of the other 3 times? 4? How many times has he experienced serious ring temptation? 4, right? Twice on the road, the second time with Gildor. So the first time it passes relatively quickly. Second time he's going to give in, except Gildor and company show up in time. Third time in the House of Tom Bombadil. Fourth time in the Barrow. Oh, in the Pony as well. Yeah, true. That would make 5. Yeah. Anyway, okay. The point is, those are 2 major ones, right? And in particular, those are the 2 times that he gave in to it. No, that's not true. I was thinking the House of Tom Bombadil. The Barrow and the message of Gandalf. Both, so he's remembering the Barrow, the time he was tempted to put on the ring and resisted the temptation in the Barrow and instead sang to Tom Bombadil. The other time, the message of Gandalf. Remember, that's what he was telling himself when he was tempted to put on the ring in the Shire, the one that Gildor rescued him from, right? When he remember, like, the advice of Gandalf seemed absurd. Remember that line? That rationale, right? That rationalization that we saw. And that was one of the clearest times when we saw that, when it was, where that really established itself. That was the moment when that really established itself as one of the most obvious markers of a ring temptation, right? Yeah. True, Tom. Frodo was tempted to put on the ring when Lobelia and Otho showed up the day after Bilbo left. Yeah, I wasn't counting that one. Yeah, that one seemed to be comparatively mild compared to some of the other ones. Okay. So, agreed. He's remembering the other ring temptation. So Frodo himself is associating this moment with the other times when he was experiencing super temptation from the ring to put it on, right? So we certainly can't disregard that. So I think we have to say the ring is involved here somehow. But as several of you are also pointing out, there are some significant differences between this and the other times that we've seen the ring temptation. Right? Notice how that our attention is drawn to that too, not with the hope of escape or of doing anything, either good or bad. He simply felt that he must take the ring and put it on his finger. That's not how the ring has ever operated, right? He was tempted before. That rationalization signature every single time the ring has tempted him, it's provided him with a long string of reasons why it's either totally fine to do it or why it's actively desirable, right? Remember, in the Barrow, he had this like vision, right? Not vision, but he had this like mental picture, right? Of himself running free across the, weeping for Merry and Pippin, right? I love that little touch of the ring kind of throwing a bone to his compassion, like, you will mourn for them later. Right. And they would appreciate that. Right. And they would understand. Even Gandalf would say there was nothing else you could have done. So when the ring is tempting him, that's how it works. That seems to be anyway how it works. So But that's not what we see. And again, the narrator draws our attention to the fact that it is not working that way, right? Not with the hope of escape or of doing anything either good or bad. He simply felt he had to put the ring on. Exactly, Austin. It's always been about self-preservation before. That's been the number one rationale, right? That's been the number one rationalization. Yeah, Boomful, exactly. He's not even really giving into a temptation of any, or other than just to put the ring on. Thinking about the same thing another way. In every single case, the putting on of the ring was always a means to an end, right? Usually self-preservation, escape. It's going to catch me. It's sniffing its way straight towards me. I'm going to put it on and then I'll be safe, right? I'm going to put it on and I'm going to escape from the Ringwraith. I'm going to put on my ring and therefore prove that it's really the ring, because I totally need to test it now that Tom Bombadil chucked it up in the air and made it, pulled it out of my ear and whatever it is that he does, right? So I need to test it. But of course there's no explanation for why he's leaving the door. But still, point is, it's always been the ring temptation has always been use the ring as a means to an end. And it's that end that the ring seems to hold out in front of the ring bearer as the motivator, right? This is much simpler than that, right? This is much simpler than that. He just feels this. He simply felt he must take the ring and put it on his finger. He's feeling this compulsion, right? Which seems more like compulsion than temptation. Notice his own will is barely engaged here. Not in the same way, anyway, that it has been engaged by the ring in the past, right? Again, the ring, remember the ring holds out a desirable thing to you and says, essentially, all this can be yours if you just put me on and claim me, right? That's the MO of the ring, right? That sound familiar, Bible scholars, right? I mean, that seems to be how it operates. And of course, I'm referring to the temptation of Jesus in the wilderness by Satan. But again, it's a temptation to put on the ring in that sense, right? In the sense of, you will be tempted to use it as a means to an end which you find desirable, even if it's something as simple as self-preservation, right? That is not what's happening to Frodo here. Now, I don't think that absolutely proves that the source of this temptation is not the ring. I just think it's a really important data point that we should look at, right? Exactly. Lincoln says it's not temptation, it's battering down his will by brute force. Yes. That is definitely more like what it sounds like. It just, resistance becomes unbearable, right? Notice it's not, even that is interesting, right? It's like the opposite. Temptation is a pulling, right? Hey, you want this, right? Come over here. You want this, right? You're being drawn and pulled. This is a pressure that's being pushed onto him. It's a weight that he can't bear. He can't any longer hold up against the force of this desire to put on the ring, right? It's even acting differently in that way. So yeah, Tillian is wondering, would it be a sense of the ring that this is the end, not merely a step towards it? So basically the ring changing its tactic because it doesn't need to be coy anymore. That this is just the ring saying, okay, I'm not playing games anymore, right? This is end game right here, right? All you got to do is, if I can just get you to put on the ring, so I'm going to I don't normally play this way, but this time I'm going to just overwhelm you. It's possible, but I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is that, well, I mean, as you know, I am doubtful that the ring is really sentient in that way. That the ring is planning and stuff in that mode. I think that the ring does what it does because of what it is. I think that temptation to power, remember, the ring is designed to be a means to an end, right? When it's doing its job, when it's being a means to an end. For the ring just to say, okay, I'm just going to arm wrestle you into submission right now. The idea that the ring can change its I don't think the ring can change its tactics any more than fire can change its tactic. I mean, like a fire isn't going to be like, heat isn't working here. Let me try cold instead. No, it's a fire. It's hot, right? That's what it does. And I kind of think that the ring is the same. Again, I'm not saying that it's totally impossible that the ring has some kind of perception or intelligence, but I do think that it is primarily acting out its nature. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Several of you are asking, where's Aragorn at this time? Well, hang on. We don't know. We'll get there. Zephyr is really bothered about this. Why is Aragorn dropping the ball? I hear you. Let's give him a minute. Okay. Well, of course we're gonna have to give him a week because I'm done after this slide. The other option so there are three options, I think, in our reading of this passage. Option number one is that this pressure, this unbearable psychic pressure that is being put on Frodo to put on the ring, is coming from the ring. This is just a ring thing. The ring senses the presence of the Ringwraiths and is like, okay, this is endgame. I'm turning it up to 10, right? That's one reading. The other reading would be that it's the Witch King, right? This is the Witch King asserting his will over Frodo, so that this overwhelming pressure, this desire to put on the ring, is coming from the Witch King, not from the ring itself. And that's why it's different than the rest of the times that we have seen him tempted by the ring, right? A third reading would be that it's some kind of combination between the two of them. And I think that I incline towards that, actually. So yeah. I think that the ring is involved, but I think it's only indirectly. I think we are seeing the will of the Witch King here. That primarily what is going on, this is single combat between the Witch King and Frodo, except it's not single combat because the Witch King has his posse with him, and that strengthens him. But I think that this is the assault. This is the attack right here. In as much as the rest of it was the initial bombardment, right? This is now the invasion, and it's a straight up spiritual attack. Again, notice, what would an outside observer see, right? If we have a drone with night vision recording this from above, what's it seeing so far, right? They're standing there back to back, or with their backs to the fire, rather. These shadows come in. You can't really see anything, but something darker than the darkness comes in. Two hobbits fall down to the ground. One cowers down, and the other stands there and does nothing, right? And then vanishes eventually. So there's going to be a very small number of physical actions that happen here. And yet the combat is happening, right? It's happening right here. Now, obviously, so you're the Ringwraiths, right? Hobbits look alike, right? I mean, like, do the Ringwraiths have a description of Frodo, right? You know, I mean, like, the Witch King surely isn't pulling a letter out of his pocket and being like, perky lad with red cheeks and a bright eye, right? That's not what he's doing, right? How is he because he doesn't care about the rest of them. obviously. They don't touch any of the rest of them. The Ringwraiths don't do, I mean, apart from scaring the bejesus out of them, they don't do anything to them, right? That once Merry and Pippin cast themselves on their faces and Sam cowers back, they ignore them, right? One of the things that they're doing is identifying the ring bearer. So the strategy by the Witch King seems to be like, the psychic attack that he's putting out here is, this sort of spiritual attack is, put on the ring, put on the ring, put on the ring, right? I know you're here. And what's more, I know you. So I know that one of you 4 hobbits has the ring. And I know that the one who has the ring is going to be subject to its temptation. See, I don't think this is not as Matt was just saying, the plan is to wraithify Frodo, but the ring has not been involved in the planning meetings, right? The ring doesn't know what's going to happen here, right? But the Ringwraiths do know what the ring is like, right? They do know. The Witch King knows the properties of the ring. So I think that it's fair to say that the Witch King has a pretty good idea that whichever of these hobbits is carrying the ring has experienced the temptation to put it on and claim it. Anybody who holds the Ring of Power is going to experience the temptation to claim it for themselves. So he says, I'm going to work on that, right? I'm going to work on knowing this weakness you're going to have, knowing that you have been subject to this temptation before. I'm going to work on that opening, and it works. And somebody, Matt, I think it was you before, or somebody, who was it? I forget. But anyway, somebody before was commenting on the fact that, okay, now trying to remember who it was, made me forget what it was that they said. Oh dear, boy, I'm not doing so well here. Boy, that point really fizzled out in a hurry, didn't it? Never mind. Oh well, lost it completely. Getting late. Yeah. One of the things that I love about this passage is Sam. What don't I love about Sam? But he felt Sam looking at him as if he knew that his master was in some great trouble, but he could not turn towards him. Sam's love for Frodo, Sam's devotion to Frodo is such that he is tuned into Frodo. He knows. Nobody else can see what's going on. There's nothing happening, right? Nothing is still happening. He's just standing there. Everyone's just standing there. Now there's a bunch of creepy shadows standing there, but everyone's just standing around. Sam knows a battle is being fought right now. He knows that his master is in desperate trouble, and there's nothing he could do. Right? If the Ringwraiths had come in swinging swords, Sam could stand up to them. Probably. Right? I mean, he does have a burning stick, after all. Anyway, he's helpless. There's nothing he can do to assist Frodo here. And this is important for us to remember later on. Remember this passage when we get to Mordor, right? When we see Sam both desiring to help Frodo, in fact helping him in some cases, and in other cases being, again, totally helpless to assist Frodo, right? This is the first moment where we've seen that since this internal struggle. The question of Frodo's will and his choice is what is going to make the ultimate difference, and Sam can't help with that. And that's one of the reasons why Frodo, in fact, deserves as much credit as he gets at the end of the book. I know there have been times in my life when I got upset at the end of the Return of the King, when I'm like, they're making all a big deal about Frodo doing this. It was Sam the whole time, right? Sam should be the one carrying the crown to Gandalf, right? Not Frodo. There are times when I would have made that point indignantly, but the point is, he couldn't, right? I mean, not to, of course, obviously, I'm not attempting to belittle anything that Sam does or how essential Sam was in the success of the quest. But at the end of the day, the resistance of Frodo's will, there was nothing that Sam could do. And we see that here for the first time, right? What's going to be the most important battle is going to be the battle that's happening with Frodo. So yes, Frodo would never have gotten across Mordor. Frodo would never have gotten up Mount Doom. Frodo would never, of course, have escaped from the Tower of Cirith Ungol and gotten the ring back. Sam enabled all of those things, all of the physical things, right? All the things that he could help with. The actual, like, schlepping Frodo to Mount Doom. Sam could help with that stuff, down to carrying him on his back, right? But there's nothing he could do about Frodo's will and Frodo's choices. And if Frodo had not made the choices that he did for as long as he did, it wouldn't have mattered, right? Sam's valor would have been in vain, and he would never even have gotten an opportunity to do it. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Let's see. So, conclusions. I do believe that the Witch King is involved here. The number one reason that I think the Witch King is involved, to me, what I think proves it, that the Witch King is very directly involved in this attack right here, is the attack, the very similar attack that happens later, and a couple of you were talking about this before. When they're in Minas Morgul, right, and the Witch King is leading his army out of Minas Morgul, and he stops, and he, that there's going to be another conflict. There's going to be a rematch between Frodo and the Witch King at that moment. And what happens? What happens when the Witch King senses some other power in his valley, and he turns his will? Frodo's hand immediately starts going towards the ring, right? And he's got to, like, physically stop his hand. He again is under this kind of compulsion to put the ring on, exactly like is described here. There it's described more outwardly, as if from Sam's point of view. Here it's described internally, as if from Frodo's point of view. And maybe that is so, right? But yeah, this kind of battering compulsion, Lincoln, that's a good description of it. This seems to be how the Witch King is operating, and it's unlike how the ring operates. But again, I think it's the ring that has made Frodo vulnerable to it. Oh, I remember the point that I forgot. And I'm Matt, I think it was you, and that is that his terror is swallowed up. That it's interesting that Frodo stops being afraid, right? When this assault begins, his terror is swallowed up in the sudden temptation to put on the ring. That too, personally, that to me supports the Witch King instead of the ring argument. See, if it's the ring would use that as part of the rationalization. Like, gosh, aren't you afraid? You're right to be afraid, right? You're so afraid right now. The sensible thing to do would be to put me on and get the heck out of here, because I'm all about helping people escape. That's what I do. Ask your uncle, right? I help people escape. So put on the ring. Anyway, so that's how the ring, but swallowing it up, because remember, the fear is coming from the Ringwraiths in the first place. So this seems to me the Witch King saying, all right, shifting gears, right? I have been oppressing him with fear. Now I'm shutting off the fear, and I'm turning on overwhelming temptation to put on the ring, right? I'm gonna start blasting on all frequencies this compulsion, right? To try to just compel him to do what I want him to do and reveal himself by putting on the ring. So Ambrosius, Aurelianus wants to know if the Witch Kings and Ring's influences were accidentally at odds with each other then. Yeah, I think that's quite possible for that to happen. Again, remember, Ambrosius, even in that scene in Minas Morgul, right? What causes the Ringwraiths to stop, right? The Witch King to stop, is that he senses some other power in his valley, right? Like, what is that? An upstart, a rival, right? Some other power that is not mine. He doesn't stop and say, "Oh, a kindred spirit," right? No. He's like, some other power. I shall cow that thing, right? And he exerts his will in this compulsion, right? So that's not to say that he and the Ring are actually rivals, but there's at least an element there, I think. Yeah. Now, Ardent Crayon, I disagree with you. I don't think that compulsion is part of what we see the Ring do at all. Temptation is what we see the Ring do. Rationalization, temptation. It tries to convince Frodo to do this thing. It gives him reasons to think that this is a good choice that he should make, right? But it's still about his choice. It is trying to influence his will to do a particular thing. Compulsion is about brute force. And brute force is exactly what's described here. He closed his eyes and struggled for a while, but resistance became unbearable. And then he does it. Yeah. Okay. So like I said, I don't think the Ring is uninvolved, but I don't think this originates from the Ring. I think the Ring might be, being exploited in a sense, or rather the influence that the Ring has already gained over Frodo is being exploited by the Witch King. But I think that this comes from the Witch King and not from the Ring itself. Whereas the temptation to put the ring on in the Prancing Pony, I think came from the Ring, right? Again, that's classic. Like, this is an embarrassing, silly situation. Wouldn't you like to escape out of this silly situation? That's how the Ring talks, right? When you're the ring bearer, at least while you're still in Bree, and not when you're on the plains of Gorgoroth. Then it speaks to you rather differently. Yeah, Matt, exactly. Good. Matt says the key difference is that Frodo is putting on the ring, but he's not claiming it in this scene as he will in Mordor. Yeah, Matt, in a sense, his will is not involved in the same way that the Ring wants to get his. The Ring is trying to recruit his will, right? So that he chooses to claim the ring for himself and to seek power for himself. Again, not to seek the ring. Ring is a means to an end. That's its job, right? To seek something else, anything else. The ring doesn't care what, right? It's going to seek, as long as he seeks something else using the ring, right? Claiming the ring for himself in order to accomplish whatever the heck end it is that the ring can convince him to try to accomplish, right? It doesn't matter. Conquest, gardening, whatever, right? Seafood, it doesn't matter. It'll use any of those things as ends, but it's all about making itself the means. But Matt, you're right. When he's putting on the ring here, he's not claiming it. You could argue he's doing the opposite of claiming the ring for himself, right? To claim the ring for yourself means I have decided to seize this thing, to achieve the end that I want to achieve, right? And I'm going to use the ring as my instrument in order to achieve that, as the means to achieve that end. So I claim the ring and take its power unto myself in order to enable me to do that thing that I want to do, right? Here, there's no thing. There's nothing he's trying to do. It's not being used as a means to an end at all. And he's not claiming it. He's not doing anything. He's submitting rather than setting himself up and trying to gain some power or some end for himself. He's submitting, right? He's obeying in putting on the ring. It's almost exactly the opposite of the way of what the ring is trying to get Frodo to do. Another reason I think it seems to me that this is primarily the Witch King exploiting the ring rather than the ring coming up with this temptation itself. Okay. Mary, I agree with you. I think that this kind of completely non-corporeal combat that's happening here between the Witch King and Frodo, which is going very poorly for Frodo at the time here, is much more terrifying than a fight with swords and torches, right? So yeah, it is much more interesting and much more effective. The one small thing that I would say in answer to the what the heck is Aragorn doing with himself during this time, this doesn't take long, right? Even in the film, they drag that out, I think. Remember when because in the film, Merry and Pippin and Sam both perform better, right? Merry and Pippin form up in front of them and get shoved away. And then Sam comes and actually exchanges a few blows with the Witch King and gets thrown down, and then Frodo falls over, right? So Frodo performs least well of all four of them in the film version, right? It's not taken that long. They're all standing back to back around the fire. So where is Aragorn? Right there, right? Now notice we don't know what's happening with him. We're told what happens with all four hobbits. We're not told what he's doing, right? And yet, how much time has passed? When did they cross into the dell? Like, who knows? Half an hour ago? 30 seconds ago? It could be anything, right? This is an almost like timeless struggle that Frodo is in here. I think it's quite likely that Aragorn doesn't know what's happening. Sam knows, right? Because Sam has a major advantage over Aragorn here in knowing Frodo, right? Sam can see that his master is in some great trouble. I don't think Aragorn can see it. I don't think Aragorn fully anticipates what's going on here and what the real danger to Frodo is. That at least is my very quick answer, but we'll see. We'll get to Aragorn later on and his actions. And by later on, I mean next week, because it is time to stop our discussion. Next week, we're going to finish. We're going to finish the chapter. That's right. After only, 16 class sessions on chapter 11, we are absolutely going to finish the Knife in the Dark chapter and then get ready for the final chapter of book 1. That's going to happen next week. Thank you guys for joining me this week. So I'm going to say goodbye to the folks on Twitter. Great to have some comments from you guys on Twitter this week. That was awesome. And we'll... So I'll be back next week, normal time. Don't forget my announcements at the beginning. This weekend, Saturday the 22nd, is our Hobbit Day reading event from 3 to 5 o'clock. Just come here to Twitch, and I'll be broadcasting it then here as well as on GoToWebinar. If you want to find out more information on our whole calendar, go to our donate page, signumuniversity.org/donate, and all of the stuff for the campaign and all our events and the registration links and everything. It's all there. Okay, so just go right there and you can find all the stuff. Thank you guys so much for joining me. It's field trip time, so don't go away. Those of you who are on Twitch and in game, and we're gonna continue our explorations. I'm gonna say goodbye to the Twitter folks. Thank you guys. And the moots, register for the moots. Absolutely. Thank you, Matt. Absolutely. We have 4 moots open right now, which is kind of amazing. This is the first time we've ever had registration open for 4 events at the same time. Middle Moot in Kansas City, which is soon, October 6th. It's going to be happening in just a few weeks. And then LA Moot on October 27th. And then Magnolia Moot down in Charlotte, North Carolina, which hopefully is not completely underwater. Everything all right down there, Matt? Everything okay down in Charlotte? I'm hoping. We just got dumped on. We got the after effects of Florence today. Got 4 inches of rain today up here. We're okay. It wasn't a big deal, just a lot of rain, but nothing like, of course, what you guys had down south. But anyway, Magnolia Moot is on the 10th of November down in Charlotte, North Carolina, and registration is open for that. And then, so Eric, what you do, go to signumuniversity.org, and then you just scroll down just a tiny little bit and you'll see all our events there. There should be a page for Magnolia Moot there. Yeah. So, oh, good. That's right, Matt. You guys are on high ground there down in Charlotte, so that's good. But anyway, so oh, and then fourth Tex Moot, right? Tex Moot happening in January, and our registration is open for that too, January 19th, I believe, down in Waco, Texas. So all 4 moots open for registration. Hopefully, wherever you are in the country, there's something vaguely near to you, and if there isn't yet, there will be soon. So again, Kansas City, Los Angeles, Charlotte, North Carolina, and Waco, Texas. All 4 coming up here in the next few months. So all right. Let us head out on our field trip. Thanks, guys, for joining me. Valori couldn't join me tonight, as she so often does. She is ill. I think she's okay, hurricane-wise, but having been braced for the hurricane and not sure if she was going to be flooded out or losing power or whatever, she turns out to have gotten ill this week. So that's sad. But we shall power on. So let's head out. So we're just gonna go. We're gonna continue in the Lone Lands. Ooh, hey, we can go to the stables this time. Let's go to this. So I'm hoping that most of you will be able to take a horse to Oscar Ruth with me. Yeah. So if you want to switch over to Twitch channel, that'll be good. Because that'd be handy. Rather than having to ride out all the way across the Lone Lands again. All the way across Breelands and through the Lone Lands, I should say. Because we are getting towards the other side. So you'll remember I've been doing this sort of historical survey of the ruins of the Lone Lands, trying to get a sense of the place, because it's one of those places that I find so fascinating in the game. And the Lone Lands is not like one of the most universally loved areas in Lotro. But I find the Lone Lands, and have from the very beginning, I find it really fascinating from an adaptation standpoint. Because on the one hand, in the stories, the descriptions that we have of these places are very... Okay, wait, I don't mean that the descriptions are boring in the sense that, like, the descriptions are boring to read. I mean, the descriptions of it is just that it is a boring place, right? There's not much there. Empty, desolate wilderness. There's Bree, there's empty, desolate wilderness with a big hill in it, right? So you're the game developers. You're making this area, the Lone Lands. What the heck do you do, right? What do you do with that? Tolkien gave them so little material to work with in his descriptions of the Lone Lands, if you think about it. So much less for the Lone Lands than for many of these other areas. Oh, wait, hang on. I was going to go to the stable master. Because what do you need? I can do... Wait, where's Lone Lands? There we are. Do I have? Yes, I do. Yeehaw. Anyway, so let's meet up at Oscar Ruth. Anyway, so like I said, Tolkien gave them so little to work with in the Lone Lands, right? As far as directly, and yet implicitly there's a lot, right? We know that although the characters see and encounter very little, in this place when they're passing through it, both in The Hobbit and in the Fellowship of the Ring, yet we know that it was an interesting place historically, right? When we learn about when we read in Appendix A, for instance, about the history of the Arnorian civil wars and all that stuff, we know this was a crucial, really, like the war between Arthedain and Rhudaur was like won and lost here in this place. Ultimately, of course, it came down to the battle at Fornost, of course, but still, this was a huge battleground that was really pivotal. And of course anyway, so we know it has a really rich history. We know, but we don't know anything else about it, right? So how do they approach doing this? How do they create interest in this place without just simply making up wild random things, right? So that's why I find the Lone Lands so fascinating. Oh wait, on the subject of wild random things. I was about to completely ignore the wild random things that are just across the street from Oscaruth, of course. Because there are some wild random things that they did invent to fill this up. And I think most people agree, including most of the Locho developers that I've met, though they're very good. They're very good at maintaining their solidarity with previous developers who are no longer there. But so, you know, I can almost never get them to say inappropriate critical things of ideas of things that have come before. However, I think it's pretty clear that this group of people is not very popular with any of them. Now we've looked at these guys before, right? These are the Earthkin. We looked at them and talked about them in the North Downs, right, when we were up there. So we don't have to do this again. We've looked at settlements and their bizarre aurochs horns that I totally thought were parts of their body earlier on. This whole area, their standing stones and their storyline, which is kind of weak, at least I find it kind of weak, seems to me to be the weakest element of adaptation in this entire section. Exactly the kind of thing that they could have just done a lot of, right? Like, hey, let's bring in totally other random stories. Gartha Garwin, to me, stands in stark contrast with the Earthkin here, right? With the Earthkin, it's like, let's invent something sort of vaguely Tolkienian, but not really very Tolkienian, and let's, you know, kind of slap it in there, and then, because we don't have anything else to put there, right? At least it feels that way. And I'm doing critfic now, of course, in explaining why it is that they did this, instead of just explaining what it is that I think is bad about it. But anyway, I think that you guys see what I mean. In Gartha Garwin, we see something very different, right? And that is taking some concepts and ideas that are in fact central to Tolkien's thought, to Tolkien's stories, and putting them together, admittedly in an interesting and different way. Then we see there's no exact precedent for that, for precisely that kind of story in Tolkien's works. And yet we do see something, it is composed of elements that are very much present, unlike a lot of the stuff that we see with the Earthkin here. So anyway, let's carry on ignoring the Earthkin, which fortunately is relatively easy to do here in the Lone Lands. So, all right, so let's get back to, so you'll remember where we were. If we look at the map for a second, I was theorizing from Weathertop that all of the ruins south of the road were going to be from Arthedain, and all of the ones to the north of the road were going to be from Rhudaur, that this was going to represent the frontier. And, of course, my theory was triumphantly vindicated as we've been exploring. And by the way, I totally didn't cheat on that. I mean, I'd been there before, but I didn't remember. I hadn't been to the Lone Lands in, gosh, like 2 years or something, exploring these ruins. I did this. Wiggin did this. I did a completionist Lone Land trek, but gosh, that was ages ago, at least 2 years ago, since I did that. So I didn't remember what was on the ruins on either side of the road. I was just speculating that it would make sense. And guessing about the kind of sense that it was going to end up making. And I ended up being right, which I'm going to carry on bragging about for a while because I was fairly proud of that. But now, as I promised last week, in today's field trip, I want to push this a little bit further because with Oscaruth, we kind of come to the edge. The line that Arthedain is branching out and forming, which is weird because Arthedain is mostly up to the north and west of this, right? So them kind of encroaching around to the south seems to be, again, the suggestion that the ruins are making here is that the people of Arthedain were trying to establish a southern frontier to prevent Rhudaur from expanding down into the south. So what happens out here with the Harloeg in the south? So first I want to look at the other ruins up here on this hill, because we could see those from across the way. There is Oscaruth over there where we were last week, and I want to come up here and see what we see in these ruins. Are these Rhudauran ruins? I assume they're gonna be. But I wanted to confirm that, and I wanted to see if there were any other interesting elements that we can see. Now we're coming up on Wraiths, or not Wraiths, Wights, I meant to say. And of course we can immediately see that it's definitely Rhudaur in Ruin. There's the crown right there. I want to be looking at sort of stylistic similarities and differences. Now from here, it's fairly clear that it's similar to Oscaruth, I would say. Now, of course, in the in-game storyline, which Grifflet explored when I was down here with him, this place has been, like, there's, you know, wights in the... What are the bosses called? I'm forgetting. Yeah, this looks a lot like Oscaruth. Is this... Ooh, actually, it looks also like the one that's right under Weathertop. What are the names of the bad guys? The big bads here who have the sigils. The Gaunt Men. Thank you, Deathman. I forgot about that. I couldn't remember what they were called. The Gaunt Men. Yeah. So we have the Gaunt Men. And there, see, they've set up their white factories. Architecturally, this is more like... What was that thing called? I forget. The ruin right under Weathertop here. That first Rhudaur in Ruin that we saw, or rather I should say the most westerly of the Rhudaur in Ruins there. The one that looked like it was establishing the, you know, sort of forward base of operations very near to Weathertop. This looks more like it with these archways and these courtyards. This is much more windy. With all these stairs and things, reminding me a little bit more, actually, of that crazy Arthedanian one. Oh, here's one. Hey, it's one of the masters. Yeah, look at that. Gaunt dude. The Gaunt dudes are really fascinating. Huh. Forgetting how I get over there. Bet this has a big Rhudauran crown on it. Yes, it does. What is this, you think? Observation post? That's... Yeah, it's very murky, of course, because it's evil here. But that would be Oscaruth right across the way there. Yes, it would. Okay, yeah, those are the towers of Oscaruth. I'm wanting to find my way up to that tower. Can we go around here? I think we can. Yeah, it's a little windy. Ah, yes. Oh, the purple white factories. I remember these. There's another Gaunt dude down there. Green white factory. Do I have... Oh, all right, there are stairs. Okay. All right. Yeah, notice, unlike Oscaruth, which was clearly designed for habitation, this is not designed... Doesn't seem to be anyway designed for habitation. This seems to be, you know, well, not exactly concentric fortress, but sort of layer within layer. It's one of the reasons I'm keen to get to this tower. There's another tower over there, which looks to be more like a watchtower, but this is really sort of the obvious heart of this citadel. Look at that. Oh, that is gorgeous. I mean, in a, like, green and creepy way, but... Oh, yeah. Oh, I love it. So look at how we have, so we have the crowns of Rhudaur, right? Very prominent. Oh, look, that's splendid. Look at this. So look at the way that they have put this together is just beautiful. So we've got the two crowns down here, right? At the bottom of the tower. And then you've got the two crowns flanking the scepter of Annuminus with the little crown on top of the scepter, right? Nice touch. So you've got the crown of Rhudaur and the scepter of Annuminus. I like that very much. But then you've got the five kings here in the middle. And those are the same five kings. Aren't they the same five kings that we've seen in Arthedanian towers? Right? Aren't they? Nyrost. Thank you, Pontian. I forgot the name of it. Nyrost, the ruins near Weathertop. That's what I was thinking. Yes, this is reminding me of Nyrost. And a little bit of Minas Ariel, but, you know, more evil. But anyway, I love how they have accentuated the arches with these hanging skeletons, right? So these are obviously modern, right? This is old and ruinous, but this tower is so well preserved here. I'm calling it ruinous. It's this tower's in great shape. And it's got the 5 kings. Is that Isildur and his 4 sons? Very prominent, though, and right here at the heart of everything. And then, of course, look how hideously corrupted. Ooh, look, there's a tomb. Oh, with the Rudauran shield on it. Have we seen the crown of Rudauran, a shield, before? We've seen Arthedanian tombs, and we've seen Cardolan tombs. And this guy is a king with a spiky crown. Right, so notice that his crown doesn't actually look like the forest crown of Rudauer here, right? Whoa. Y'all all right? Okay. Sorry. All of a sudden everybody was kneeling and looking confused. Ooh, and I've never noticed that before. Notice these branches that I can never figure out and that I have never yet found a good interpretation of, and am still looking for any interpretive suggestions for what these branches that feature so heavily on all of these Arnorian ruins, Rudauran and Arthedanian and Cardolingian alike. Anyway, notice how they're all framed around. I never noticed that before. I don't know, maybe it wasn't before, but I think I would have noticed that anyway, though, how it's framed around almost like a, you know, like a floral border around him, right? That's really cool. I'm not sure what to make of that. Well, I'm not sure what to make of that design anywhere. And if I knew, then I would... I still want to count leaves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I got nothing. Nothing. How many branches? 4 branches, vaguely. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Or is there 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? I don't know. But yeah, no, the front of the tomb is definitely a shield. With Rudauer on it. I'm trying to look, is there anything else we can see on the... Huh. I wish I were shorter. Could stare at the shield more squarely. I'll look at the other side. Oh, it's a little clearer there. In the full, you know, greenish glow of the hideous, undeadly lights. Forthoughtless is wondering, could the branches mark funerary structures? Are they absent from some ruins that would suggest that they're only present at funerary structures? I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe. It's an interesting theory anyway. We can follow it up. Ooh, hey, look. Oh, it's a brazier. Right. I thought that was bigger than it was because I was standing right next to it. How many skeletons? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 skeletons on top of the wall. See, look, notice the branches are on that top row. That's where they usually are, up there above the arches. They're not universal, but they're so common. Oh yeah, Catriona, I think I've seen them everywhere. I don't... It's their universality that makes me so frustrated, you know, because I really wish I understood it better. What's this? Is it a book? Is it a quest object? Looks like a quest object. Little pedestal for quest object. Is that a quest object? Tell me that's a quest object. If so, what is it? Why is there a book here? Does anybody remember? As I say, it's been so long since I've done this quest, I don't really recall. That is a book, right? Yeah, that's totally a book. I see the spine and the curvy corners. It's not a quest object, O'Malley. Huh. That's interesting. That's very interesting. It's not a shrine. I mean, there's nothing around it. I mean, there's like it looks like a little altar. But there's nothing on the wall. I mean, I almost didn't even notice it. I thought it was just a fallen block at first. And then the thing on top, which I thought was just some kind of notch on the stone until I got closer. Weird. On the one hand, it's totally, the focal point here. But on the other hand, it's so plain. The book too, right? I mean, this doesn't look like a demonological tome, this like arcane forbidden lore, right? It just looks like somebody left the library book here. Wow. I really have never noticed that before. And I have no idea what that book is. Well, that book is a mystery. Okay. So you guys have to help me figure out. Do some research on this. See if anybody can figure out, why is there a book here? And you're right, Amathorn, they're going to be hosed when they have to pay the library fine on that book. Absolutely. Yeah, I saw Dragon Rider. I saw the crowns on the ends of the block. It's obviously a rude, which suggests, of course, Dragon Rider, great point. It suggests that it's old. This little bench, altar, whatever that is, right? Book pedestal is old. It's not a new construction. So this isn't something that was wumped up by the current inhabitants, right? Besides which, you can tell that anyway, even without the crowns, because the current inhabitants have a very peculiar style, right? I mean, like, this is the style of the current inhabitants, right? They go in for spiky, veiny rocks glowing unnatural colors, right? That's what they go in for. Or spiky iron braziers with also smoke and flames that are unnatural colors. Or they go for spiky arches with hanging cages with skeletons in, right? Those are the things that are obviously part of the new layer of construction here in the Lone Lands by the current inhabitants. Yeah, boy, somebody just knocked all of us out. Why is that happening? So yeah, obviously the folks who made this altar did not also make this altar, if altar it be, right? This book pedestal. But see, Pontine, it can't be an ancient relic of somebody who was buried here back in the Rudauran days, because that would make that book thousands of years old, and apart from the wildly improbable magnitude of the library finds attached thereto, it wouldn't be in this kind of shape, right? I mean, there's no way that a book would, I mean, it wouldn't even be tattered and useless. It would be far beyond tattered and useless, right? If there were a book that were just sitting here exposed on a stone for many, many years. I mean, like 1,500 years, right? I mean, yeah, it's, if there was a book like with paper or parchment pages that had been sitting out on a stone in the open air since the time of like the Emperor Constantine, it'd be a wreck by now, right? You wouldn't be able to tell it would be a pile of dirt by now that like grass would be growing on. So yeah, there's no way. Which means somebody left this library book here recently. I wish there were any markings on it, but I really don't think there are. Neither on the cover nor on the spine. This isn't part of those Ostgaruth riddle quests, is it? With the annoying guy with the brightly colored clothes? The treasure hunters? It's not one of their quests, is it? No? Okay. That's all I could think of. Those would create aberrations of this kind. Yeah, the title cover is face down. Yeah, and the spine is unmarked. Oh, man. Okay, anyway. So I didn't actually even intend to take this long in this ruin, but then we found all these mysteries up here. It's totally worth working our way towards the center of the, or the defensive center of this tower. So let's take off. Let's go across the way. Let's go into the swamps, into the Harloweg. Now, is anybody here? Hi, Mr. Gaunt person. Is anybody here low level? Do we have any like people who are going to die hideous and colorful deaths in the swamps with the... Where am I? Am I going to jump off a cliff? Answer is yes, I'm going to jump off a cliff. Okay. Oh, no, I'm walking into skeletons. Walking into skeletons. Jumping off cliffs. Here we go. Okay. We're walking. I think I'm going to take a shortcut here. That's good. Okay. And now we can go down here. Yes, good. Excellent. And out. Excellent. Very good. Okay. Okay. It's a volume of the Mort Darthur. Yeah. Could be a Crystal Aowen. It's possible. So those of you who are higher level might want to be kind of proactive with our friend. There's going to be a lot of trolls and things down here. So, there's the last bridge. Not quite yet. We'll get to that next. And, ooh, wait, hang on. Little mini ruin over here next to the road. We got to check this out. Because we're about to cross the road. There it is. There's the road. Headed off towards the last bridge. Very good. But right over here we get this little bitty ruin. What can we make of this? Because see, now we're piecing together the story that I'm much less confident in. Oh, yes, we get the nasty scabrous wargs here. Okay, and I see star. I'm not seeing crowns. It's the difference. This is the Arthedanian stone. Look at those branches right up there. Right on cue. Right, I think this is Arthedanian. Just by the coloring, I think it's Arthedanian, even though I don't... there's not that much to go on here. What the heck was this? Little outpost? Is this Arthedanian, is this like a guard post? Just like to watch over the road by the bridge? Is this like the break room where the sentries who would be looking over the road and the bridge would... I don't know. Seems impractical in lots of ways. Toll booth, Ericab, yeah. Possible's a little out of the way for that, but yeah. Yeah, Fort Thanos, that's why I'm not in a hurry to get to the last bridge, because we'll get there, but we're not there in the text yet, so nor will be for a little while. It won't be that long, actually. Okay, so now we're going down to the Harloweg. So the first thing we notice here is that the land falls down very much. So it's not just a little notch in the mountains down here that we're getting, right? It's a significant topographical shift from highlands down into lowlands and wetlands specifically. So what would the Arnorians have done here? If you are Arthedain and you're controlling the whole southern part of the road, including apparently a toll booth / guard break room there down near the bridge. The fact that that was Arthurdanian and not Rudauran suggests to me that what we're going to find down here in the Harlowig is also Arthurdanian. Oh man, it's getting late. I'm not sure I'm going to have time to fully explore down here, but let's just take a peek. Let's answer the initial question, and then we'll explore more thoroughly down here next time. My initial question being, whose ruins? Whose ruins, and why did we make them? Because let's face it, we're a little out of the way down here. What is that? Oh, what is that? A wagon? It is a wagon. It's the ruins of a wagon. Who had a wagon down here? This is like the wagons in Waymeet, isn't it? Never noticed that before, did I? It's one of the nice things about getting old is, you get to discover things anew. It's like doing them for the first time. Okay. Right. Approaching ruins for identification. Just looking around here. There's the whole complex from a distance. Smells like Arthedain. Yeah. First of all, isn't it pretty cool that you can identify ruins, the historical provenance of ruins, from a distance like this? You just come up and like, oh yeah, Arthedain every day of the week, right? Watch me be wrong. But I'm pretty sure we're not going to see... If we are, I'm going to get super interested. But that's not going to be a crown. That's going to be a star. Yeah! Bam! Oh, that's right. That is right. See, there it is. Absolutely. See, and you can tell from the coloration, right? Totally different structure, totally different style, totally different tint of stone, right? You could tell these were Arthurdanian. Okay, this is a really complicated complex here. Oh, hey, Gamey Cactus, welcome. So you're downloading the game? That is awesome. Oh, man, so many hours of wonderfully rich Tolkien fun you have ahead of you. I'm telling you, take nothing for granted. Because this game has been so lovingly constructed, so thoughtfully engaged with the books. It's just awesome. Look at this guy here. He's got us shields with 5 stars. Okay. And he also has the boundary of the vines there. And he's also wearing a crown, which is intriguing. And the upward pointed star. No, don't tell me. Don't tell me. This can't be Cardolingian. No. Oh my goodness. Oh, that would be amazing. This wouldn't be Cardolan down here, would it? I would love that. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Whew. Oh, this is exciting. This is exciting. Okay. All right. We'll explore this more fully next time. It is way too late to do a full exploration of the ruins down here because they're very complicated. But we'll look around down here more next time. But wow. Okay. I did not see that coming. And I'm not 100% sure that I am seeing what I'm seeing. But it's at least possible. And, yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Okay. All right. Yeah. Now, everywhere I look, my theory is being confirmed. So, okay. All right. We'll talk more about this next time. So we'll come back to the Harlowig next time for our next field trip, and we'll continue around here, and then we'll head up to Garthagarwin and explore more around in there. And then if we still haven't gotten to the last bridge and into the Trollshaws yet, then I'll go back up. And remember, we still have to finish our tour of Angmar, which we were in the middle of too, which is going to be our filler for those times when we're waiting to progress equally in the books. Anyhow, okay. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining me. That was a super fun class, and I will see you guys next week. I will be around next week. Yes, I will. And don't forget, Tuesday. Don't forget Saturday, the 22nd, our Hobbit Day reading event, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on our Twitch channel. You can also go to signumuniversity.org/donate or /fund also. And you'll be able to see the events, and there's a registration link there. And follow us on social media, and you'll figure that out. Or just follow our Twitch channel, and you'll get a notification, and it will all be easy. Thanks, everybody. I will see you guys next week. Bye now. Thanks for joining me on this epic exploration of The Lord of the Rings, and of Standing Stone's video adaptation of Tolkien's story. If you are having even half the fun I'm having on this journey, I hope you will consider supporting the project by donating at signumuniversity.org/fund.